To live abroad or not to live abroad? That is tonight's question. Hey, what's up? I'm Rafael de Furia, aka Rafi D is me, and I am back at it again on another beautiful Friday night. And this week we are going to be talking about some of the realities of expat life and some of this life that I think gets overlooked quite often. Some of the pros and some of the cons. But before we get too deep into this video, if you would like to see more content like this about moving to Italy, Italian dual citizenship, and living life abroad, please be sure to subscribe with that notification bell turned on. And if you could also give this video a like, I'd really appreciate it, as it does help out the channel. And a huge thank you to those of you who've been helping to make videos like this possible. Really, your support makes a huge difference in my ability to be able to continue this. And for those of you who would like to also help to make videos like this possible, you can go to rafaeldefuria.com/Patreon to help on a monthly basis, or if you can only help out once, you can go to rafaeldefuria.com/support. Of course, every little bit makes a huge difference in my ability to continue to move forward with this project. But what is it about this expat life? What is it about going abroad? What's so interesting? These are some questions that I now start to think after having lived abroad for 10 years, because it's become the norm. It's not mundane. I hate to use that kind of word when talking about this, but this is part of the reality I've come to get to know. But why I stay abroad is because it's a new and interesting, different experience every day. If you would like, or those days when you just want to curl up, stay at home and just hermit out, totally possible. Of course, one of the huge pros about being an expat in this era that we live in now is technology makes a huge difference in our ability to be able to survive. Of course, this makes a difference depending on where you are. Living in Italy, in a more northern area that's very well connected, not only transportation-wise and communications-wise, but also when it comes to getting things shipped here. It's very simple. Like, this isn't something that goes for everywhere, but shopping on Amazon is very much a thing here in Italy. I mean, you can get a lot of different products on there, not as wide of a range as you would find in other countries, but if you can't find something on the Italian Amazon site, you can always look on amazon.de. The Italian Amazon website is amazon.it. This is not sponsored, by the way. Or when those times come up that maybe .it and .de don't have anything, you can go to .es to find something from Spain. But if there are ever times where you're looking for books in English that you can't find on .it, .de, or .es, you can always go to .co.uk and get onto the British Amazon website. But in the different regions, you'll potentially spend more for shipping. Although very often shopping on the Amazon.de website, you can get free shipping to Italy. And one of the big bonuses about shopping on there is that they actually have the website available in English, whereas the Italian one is only available in Italian. But if you know what you're looking for, then it's not that big of a deal. That's not necessarily the way I was meaning about being connected, but the connection with your family, to be able to hop on a phone call really quickly and easily through WhatsApp, or the phone line that I have right now, I pay like €7.99 per month. That includes 50 gigabytes of data, unlimited minutes in Italy, unlimited SMS in Italy, but then also unlimited calls to, I don't remember how many countries, but most of the countries it's only landlines. But the lucky thing about being from the US is that if I ever want to call the US and I have someone who has only a cell phone there, I can call landlines and cell phones there, and it's all included in my monthly bill. So being able to just, when those times that data may fail me, like the connection that I have, like based on the signal strength, I can just pick up the phone and there it is right there. And that is a service that I do sometimes use, even to call for website hosting, to call to an American company. You dial plus 1-800 instead of 1-800. Very simple, very easy. Skype, I almost never use that now, but WhatsApp, FaceTime, very easy options to use, and they can handle a lot of different things. And I know other expats, they just rely on these things to keep in contact with their families. I was actually just speaking to someone a couple days ago whose family is in Florida. Well, actually, by the time this video comes out, hopefully the hurricane has passed. They were saying that they were talking to their family in Florida and like trying to say like, okay, you guys gotta go, you gotta get out. Whereas in the past, even if you go 10 years back, communication wasn't as easy as it is now. I remember first when I left, also is because the family members that I was mostly keeping in contact with didn't really use computers. Now, one specific family member is also an expat and has since learned the ways of the smartphone. Not even really that smartphones were so much of a thing back when I left the States. I mean, you had the original iPhone and like horrible Android phones, which have come a long way since. But even to just be able to text someone, that separation isn't there. But this doesn't go for every country, and not every country has these types of plans available to be able to have this type of easy communication. And also very often for not this cheap. This is not normal. But it of course depends on where you are, and also signal strength and this and that. Some countries, expats may not even be able to buy a full cell phone plan, and you can't get a contract, or you can't sign up for more than just a simple SIM card that you top up, but then you can't top it back up. So you have to buy another SIM card, and each time you have to change your number, and it's always a big thing. That's not the case here in Italy where I live, but this does exist in some places. But also, of course, a huge con can be having to learn a new language, unless you decide to go to the UK, Northern Ireland, Australia, New Zealand, or another place where they speak English. However, when you go to one of those places, you'll end up finding out that the perfect, beautiful English that we speak back in North America is very different than what people speak abroad. Even in the UK, you'll find very often major dialectic differences, different word choices, sentence structure can completely change. But especially when it comes to word choice, there can be like very simple things. Like I remember one of the first British words I ever heard was knackered, and I was like, what's knackered? What is a knackered? This sounds like, the guy was like, oh, I'm absolutely knackered. I'm like, dude, you're what now? It's like, I mean, that's good for you, I guess. Like, what the hell? Just means tired, exhausted. But there are these words and phrases that do come up. Or even if you decide to live in an expat bubble abroad, and you have people who are second language English speakers coming into this social circle that you might be a part of, you'll find that the way that they form their sentences might not be what you're used to. And then you have to do a little bit of digging and thinking about the way that person's language works and how they might be literally translating into English. And a sentence that you might find insulting is just a very simple sentence malformed. Or even I had a friend back in the US who was an exchange student. We just recently spoke about it, and the question I remember he asked this to me, and I know he asked this to someone else. He's still first learning English, and the question that he asked was, do you have fun to go to the movies? Which is like, do I have fun at the movie theater? Yeah, I guess. Like, they're cool and all. I mean, like, I'm not such a big movie buff, but movies are cool. But the question he was really meaning to ask was, would you like to go to a movie sometime? Do you want to hang out and go check out a movie? I think in German, hast du Spaß für einen Film sehen? Since leaving Alto Adige, my German's been kind of getting blocked out of my mind. Although there was a street festival here the other day, and there were a couple of Austrian stands, and I went up, and they had Strudel and Brezen, and just my mind immediately when seeing these words, like, I couldn't get any Italian out of my mouth, and I was like, I had to ask them if they spoke German. I was like, okay, fine, because I know these words in German, but I don't know these words in Italian as well, even though Strudel is Strudel, or it's more you just change the accent in that way. But if I'm thinking about those words, like the words coming to my mind in general, and that kind of leads me to my next point, that your mind starts working in a different way. And after long enough of a time, you will have a difficult time to sometimes reach for certain words in your native tongue. I have this problem all the time. Friends of mine have heard me complain about this quite often, that I'm losing my English. I'm forgetting how to say certain words. I reach for other words in other languages very often before I'll reach for them in English. Sometimes even one of the reasons why I make a lot of cuts in these videos is sometimes to cut out content that just doesn't need to be there, because sometimes I have like a huge amount of footage and then I just condense it down to like the real meat and potatoes. But sometimes what happens is that I will be sitting there for a minute struggling to find a single simple word in English, because I can only think of it in Italian, in German, in Spanish, in Portuguese, whatever it might be, or other languages that have been necessary in my time abroad. And there are certain phrases and certain words that I will be more likely to reach for in a certain language because I use that phrase more than I ever did in America. There are certain fruits, certain vegetables, certain foods that I will reach to first in another language, or certain feelings. I would be more likely to reach for that rather than English. Thankfully, my family understands this. this struggle. And thankfully my immediate family, especially like my mother, for example, because the languages that I speak, she can understand at least, even if she doesn't necessarily speak them. So sometimes if I'm talking to her, she'll get what I'm saying, even though I can't fully explain it in English. And there'll be sometimes when I'm just tired and I just like completely lose all ability to speak my own language. So on one hand, yeah, it's cool that I'm learning these languages. So that's a pro. But the con is that because I'm having that lack of using English, a lot of the time when I leave my house, I'm not speaking in English. I'm losing that ability for certain subjects, certain kind of more daily things, daily tasks, going to the supermarket, errands, these kinds of things. Although most of my social interactions are in English, work for the most part happens to be in English. But outside of that, even when I'm doing these things where English is necessary and thinking about work, sometimes writing will be part of the work that I have to do. And sometimes I will get the phrase down on paper and then look back at it again and just see, whoa, what was I even trying to say there? Just because it's phrased in such a strange way. And then I realize, oh, okay, in Italian, you phrase it this way instead of the way you would phrase it in English. You change the word order. Or, I'm not that my Italian is so great, but those little words are starting to creep their way in and replace other words at times. I mean, there are certain foods, I know what they are in Italian. Even growing up, I knew what they were. But then if I just say it in English, I don't know how to translate it. Or there will be certain things that I just don't quite know how to translate at times. But then kind of continuing on the social thing, dating. This is a subject I've never really spoken about. I am very much a private person, especially when it comes to that. But in even social interactions, the lack of ability to use a local language at a very high level or even mediocre level can get in the way of these things. So if you're someone who's like looking to move abroad and find that special someone there, you will want to probably have the language of that place if you're really looking and very serious about finding someone there. I mean, okay, if you're going to somewhere like, I don't know, Netherlands, Sweden, Denmark, very often the people there will probably be able to communicate in English quite well. But if you're going to a place anyway, you should learn the language to be able to try and integrate. This is part of the whole integration thing that I've spoken about so many times, and why I always say language is key, language is so important, even though it's something that I still myself struggle with. I'm always preaching this because of how important it is, not just for work, not just to get by through these kinds of little things throughout the day, like food shopping, clothing shopping, stuff that you need for your home. It's also for those social interactions. I'm not saying personally that I'm disappointed in my language skills because of the whole dating thing. Like, for me, it doesn't make a difference. But there have been times in the past where maybe there was a girl who did seem interesting, but because she didn't speak English and I didn't totally speak her language, we couldn't really have a conversation. And I know there's probably someone out there thinking, well, what do you need to be able to talk for? There's plenty of other things that you could do. Call me old-fashioned. I like to be able to have a conversation with someone. I think it's quite important before certain other things come up. Anyway, seeing friends who've gotten into these types of relationships, it is interesting to see what can happen, because sometimes the culture can actually not get in the way, but it can be a barrier, because one person is very set in their ways and then this other person is very set in their ways, which is normal for adults. But then when you're coming from two different parts of the world where things function quite differently, this also can kind of get in the way. And then I've seen it even cause friction because one doesn't speak the language so well, plus the whole cultural difference on top, and the spouse, partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it may be from that place, the local will sometimes seem to get annoyed with the foreign partner, spouse, husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, or whatever it may be because of that. And so it can be tough to have those relationships. So for sure, having a similar cultural background, those standpoints can make it easier to find those connections. I mean, sometimes having something exotic is fun, and that can work. Sometimes opposites do much attract, but for sure to find those things where you share those similarities can be quite comforting and quite nice to find someone with those similar points of reference, so to speak. Just something simple of the things you grew up with as kids. Maybe you grew up with one cartoon and the other person grew up with a different cartoon in a different country, completely different, and you don't know the characters and references that they refer to, and they don't know the ones that you refer to. It can be tricky to not be able to connect on those little things. But is it necessary to connect on those things that are so insignificant? It's a bonus, I would say. But sometimes to have the language to be able to explain that can be difficult to find if you're not really a speaker of that language. And so to just express yourself in the language, to get your thoughts across, it can be quite frustrating to feel like a child, unable to express these things that you just don't have these words for. I mean, okay, you're not going to throw a temper tantrum like a kid, but sometimes on the inside, you may feel like just so frustrated but sometimes it's frustrating to not be able to just say like a simple little thing. But of course, that has to do with language acquisition. Learning to walk again, learning to talk again, it's all a part of the experience. You do very much have to learn how to carry yourself and to get through the day in a different place, in a different way. But anyway, this video is probably long enough as is, so maybe I'll save that for another time. If you guys are curious to hear more about this, let me know down in the comment section below. Of course, if you'd like to see more content like this about moving to Italy, Italian dual citizenship, and living life abroad, and expat life, of course, be sure to subscribe with that notification bell turned on. And if you could also give this video a like, I'd really appreciate it, as it does help out the channel. And again, a huge thank you to those of you who are helping to make videos like this possible on a monthly basis. And for those of you who would like to help make more videos like this possible too, you can go to rafaeldifuria.com/Patreon, or just help out once. You can go to rafaeldifuria.com/support, or for shirts, baby onesies, mugs, and more, you can go to rafaeldifuria.com/NYAG gear. And again, of course, as always, I'm Rafael Di Furia, aka Rafi D is me. Thank you for joining me on another beautiful Friday night. I hope you all have a fantastic weekend, and I look forward to seeing you all next Friday. Later.